Welcome to the show tonight. Ed for Del Mar Regent. Please visit my website, edfordmcregent.com. This should be an interesting show. We're getting very close to the election. I've got some real interesting facts on my webpage together with graphs. Please visit it. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jerry Sansing, and I'm here with Mr. Ed Bennett, who's running for the one of the at-large positions on the Board of Regents at Del Mar College. Ed's background, as we've said, I think in the past, he's got a master's degree in accounting and so forth, and he's also a CPA for the last, I guess, 30 years or so?
78, 79.
Okay, yeah, coming up real close. Okay, well, Mr. Bennett and I had been to a lot of the Board of Regents meetings at Del Mar College. I've always been concerned about the financial end of Del Mar and why we're spending so blasted much money. And I've been real disturbed over the last probably 15 years with what I consider to be, and what the Wall Street Journal said was, administrative bloat. And what we've done is we've seen an increase in the amount of, or the percentage of the monies that we have on a yearly basis for Del Mar College as a budget for the whole operation. And we've seen a vast increase in the percentage of that goes to administrative costs, and a real decrease in the amount that goes for faculty members and so forth and so on. And then also, another thing that's disturbed me, which we're looking into, is the fact that we've taken and fired a whole bunch of full-time custodians and groundskeepers, and we've contracted out to some very poor companies as far as I'm concerned. And I'm still trying to figure out where the cost savings was in that. And Mr. Bennett has looked into that, and I think he's a bit perplexed with that too, until we get some more numbers. So Mr. Bennett was over at the League of Women's Voters meeting in City Hall just the other day, and I wanted him to give you some idea of what happened over there. And I understand that Mr. Bennett was the only one, Ed's the only one, that really was more interested in cleaning up the books over there and the accounting, taking a hard look at that, than the other candidates were. So I'm going to ask Ed to tell you what his perception is of how that meeting went.
Let me address something before we get into that. The custodial help that we now have, we've contracted that for approximately $1 million a year. Right. On Tuesday, we're going to see the 176 pages that I requested of the general ledger, and that will include documents that relate to the custodian payments before it was contracted out. So at that point, this, by the way, is the $27 million estimate that I got, and we've reduced it now to 176 pages.
Right.
And much less, much less than 27. In fact, it is zero.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, from 26.7 million to zero, that's quite an admission of maybe we inflated things a little bit too much.
Maybe. but we will see that will give us the documentation as to what Del Mar was paying the salaries of custodial help before they made the transition to contracted.
Right.
So that's very important to me.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see where that cost savings is, because I can do the math pretty easily. Mm-hmm. And you can pay an awful lot of custodians for $1 million a year.
Oh yeah, and groundskeepers.
And I don't think we had that many. But we're going to find out.
Right.
We're going to find out. Now, at the League of Women Voters, we had all but one candidate show up. And of the candidates that were there, it appeared to me that I was the only one, in fact it was blatantly obvious, that I was the only one that didn't want this bond issue to pass. Everybody else said they wanted the bond issue to pass. They said Del Mar is important to the community, and everybody said it. It was like a chorus.
Right.
And I agree with that. Del Mar is important to the community.
Yes, it is.
Now that has absolutely nothing to do with passing that bond issue. Mm-hmm. Because the bond issue, it's doing several things. One is it's repairing the deferred maintenance, the destruction caused by deferring the maintenance.
Right.
So we've got buildings that are approximately 50 years old over there. Mm-hmm. They want to tear them down.
Right.
okay. We have a daughter that spent 4 years out on the East Coast at a very old campus. The building that she lived in was called Bancroft Hall. It's the largest dormitory in America. It was built in 1905.
Mm,
It is in outstanding condition.
right,
I've been there many times.
right.
That's much older than 50 years.
Oh, yeah.
1905, not 2005.
Right. That's called Naval Academy, right?
It is. That's the United States Naval Academy, and it's right on the salt water, just as Del Mar is right on the salt water. So when they say we're on the salt water and that's why our buildings don't last, well, they don't last in Corpus because you're in the salt water.
Right.
Yet on the East Coast they last, and you've been to Harvard.
Yeah.
That's much older school.
Oh, yeah.
Those buildings are much older,
Yeah.
and they're in fine shape.
Right.
So why are we knocking down buildings? Is it because we don't do the maintenance? I don't know.
Right.
They keep saying deferred maintenance. Stop deferring the maintenance.
You know, you go all over, you know, you've got University of Maryland, you've got Johns Hopkins, and then you get into Virginia down on the coast, Hampton Roads University and all. I mean, they've been there on the coast, you know, some of them in Charleston, South Carolina, and then the Florida coast, and they've been there for decades, and more so than Del Mar College. But it all boils down, as far as I can see, to deferred maintenance. And you know, why should we knock down a building for that right at this juncture, and with declining enrollment? So I'm going to go over the declining. Ask you about declining enrollments. You've looked all that up. You have the straight statistics and the true story on that.
I've done the research, which I would have expected everybody to have done before they submitted the initial $287 million bond.
Right.
That's more than $250 million. So I would have thought that somebody would have done the research before they came out with those numbers.
Right.
But once I did the research, it shows all of the financial ratios skewed way high compared to Texas average, compared to U.S. average. Del Mar is much more costly to educate a student than the Texas average or the national average. And if we pass this bond issue, right now we're at about $9,800 per student, debt per student. So we've got just short of $100 million of bond debt outstanding, and about 10,000 students, 10,500, 10,600. It went up for the first time in 4 years. So it was on a decline. From 2010 to 2013, we lost students. From 2003 to 2012, we lost 6.6% of the students. So you compare that to the other colleges in Texas, almost everyone grew from that period.
Okay.
We're one of the few that lost students, and then in the short period from 2010 to 2013, I think we are the only one that lost students.
Okay.
So now we're looking at just under $10,000 per student debt. You got the almost $100 million outstanding debt. You add the $157 million to it, all of a sudden you're jumping up to $24,000 per student debt. Now, if you look at my graph, the lowest per student debt is 0. The highest is 18,000.
Right.
So, and there aren't many higher than the 9,800 that we're currently at.
No.
And if you look at those, I know Laredo is one of the higher ones.
Mhm.
You can get into some areas that maybe they don't have other institutions, maybe they have fewer students because of the area. There's probably some reason. None of those reasons exist here. We've got 10,000 students here, we've got 10,000 out the island, and we've got another university down at Kingsville. So we're not the only institution in town.
Right.
So we don't have to educate everybody here. We're competing for the students, and by the way, we're losing the competition.
Right.
That's why the student enrollment's been declining.
Right. Well, if I see here on your table, Ed, that Coastal Bend College in up north of here at Beeville, they're at $1,450 $53 a student. They do have campuses, I know of the nursing program at Kingsville, and then they've got Pleasanton, and I think Alice, as well as there in Beeville.
They do. They've got dispersed campuses, and we've been up to that campus. It's not impressive, but it's a good place to get an education.
Well, it looks good. I mean, it's a lot better kept than I see buildings here at, in Corpus Christi. And then I guess, let's see, Del Mar is probably 2/3 of the way to the top. Let's see, Alamo Community College is 10.5. Like I say, we're at 9,900.
And it may well be that those colleges are growing so quickly
Yeah.
that their population hasn't caught up to the buildings yet. So once they have their enrollment at full enrollment, their per student debt will be much lower than ours.
Yeah. Well, Alamo Community College, it has at least 4 campuses that I know of. You've got St. Phillips, you've got
It's huge.
Palo Alto, you've got SACS itself, the San Antonio Community College, and I think they've got some more satellites around there, and it's booming. So I can see with construction,
And that land's expensive.
yes, well, right, compared to what we've got here. Okay, Houston, of course, they're growing like mad, and then Brazosport is 18.7 or 18.8, 18,800 per student.
And that's the highest right now.
Yeah, well, that's a growing area there too with the oil boom. You know, that whole.
It may well be.
Yeah.
And
Right.
there's probably a reason for that, and that's a temporary situation, whereas ours is not temporary.
Mhm.
Ours is not. When you've got enrollment declining, your debt per student is going to increase.
Right.
And we're at $9,800 now. This bond passes, we're at 24,000.
Mhm.
And if they had the original bond pass, the 287 million,
Yeah,
we'd be at 34,000.
34, 35,000.
And that is almost twice the current high.
Mhm.
Now, how much sense does that make?
Well, not much to me. You know, when I look at College of Midland is $147 per student, and then we jump up to Alvin, which is just south of Houston. That's 3,100, and then we jump up to Del Mar College, which was 9,900, and then you've got Brazosport at 18,800. And that, you know, that just doesn't make sense to me that Del Mar would be at that level, particularly when we've got such a tax base now with the Eagle Ford Shale. I don't understand. Except I do. It's the plummeting enrollment.
Enrollment goes down, cost, debt per student goes up.
Right. Well, I'm going to save some comments about why I think the enrollment's going down at Del Mar College for a later show. I've uncovered some real fascinating facts that we'll do for another show.
And Del Mar peaked in their enrollment in 2010. It went up to 2010, and it's been coming down since.
Right.
So there is a trend. It's not an anomaly.
Right. Well, how about that? You've got another chart that you're going to share with us, and it's the tax rate. And you start with Coastal Bend again, which is, I guess this is on a per $100 basis. It's what, 2.6 cents?
That's right.
Which would be
1/10
Right.
of what Del Mar is.
Right. Right. And then we go through. Let's just see some that are around here. Alamo Community College is about 15 cents per.
About a dime less than us.
Right, per 100. Let's see, Odessa is 18, Amarillo is 19, almost 20. And then we've got College of Midland. You know, they've got a real low per debt, student debt, but they're taxing a little bit higher. Maybe that's
Which may be because they're paying their debts on a current basis.
There you go. Okay. And here's Del Mar College, third from the highest at say 26 cents.
And that's down. They're third highest now. In 2008, they were second highest. So we've been at the top for a consistent period of time.
Okay.
So we're high in debt per student. We're high in taxes. But those are two indicators that we've got some inefficiencies here.
Right. Well, let me see if I can remember what you have indicated to me. Are we not 30% higher on the administrative cost and so forth. in
Actually,
most places.
the cost to educate a student, the average cost in the U.S. is about $9,800. I think I have a graph in there.
Okay.
About $9,800 a year. Del Mar is about 30, it's over 30% higher than that.
Okay.
So, what does that mean? That means that it's costing for the same education that the U.S., the whole U.S. spends $9,800 for, Del Mar spends in excess of $12,000 for it.
Oh, I see.
Now, why is that? Are our professors getting paid that much more?
No, we're not near the top rate, even in Texas.
And if we look at the budget and the trend in the budget, we can see that the percentage of salary, percentage of the budget spent on education, institutional education, is declining, yet the budget is increasing. That means the gap is filled by administration.
Right.
So the administrative costs are increasing, the educational costs are decreasing, our student population is decreasing, our debt per student is increasing, and our tax rate is among the highest in Texas.
Right.
Those are all very bad indicators.
And then you've got an increase from 20,000, or, 2003 to 2012.
Now that's an increase in most colleges. If you'll notice, there's brackets around that one.
Mm-hmm.
It's decreased 6.6%.
Okay.
So Del Mar has a decrease, and you'll see, look at all those numbers. Look at how those schools are growing
Yeah.
in that same period of time.
Right.
And Del Mar's lost students
Okay.
from 2003.
Right. So this is actually student enrollment.
It is.
Okay. Well, I don't know where Ranger is. Do you?
I don't.
Okay. They've got a 108.8% increase. But let's see. College of the Midland, which we've talked about, is an increase of 6%. I was looking to see what. Here's Alvin Community College, 32%. Houston's 33%. I don't see Coastal Bend. Yeah, Coastal Bend had an 8.5% decrease. Now, I can't believe that. Well, that's through 2012, but with Eagle Ford Shale, they're saying that we're bursting at the seams at Del Mar College with enrollment. And that's why we need all these.
I've heard that on actually a TV interview.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you burst at the seams.
Yeah.
When you're down 14% from 2010.
Yeah, well, see, this increase, that was a decrease in brackets there, was 6.6% between 2003 and 2012. And then
A
since
9-year period.
2012, yeah.
A 9-year period, and we lost students.
Yeah, well, now we're up to 14%.
From 2010 to 2013,
Right.
we've decreased 14% in student population.
Well, I don't-
So the trend, it's not an anomaly, it's a trend. We're losing students. The anomaly is that it went up this year.
Right,
Now, it didn't go up much. And in fact, on Tuesday, we know where to go now to see what the components of that increase are.
right.
But that's the anomaly. It finally went up. The trend was down. It's been down since 2003. It's been
Yeah.
down.
Well, it's amazed me. I remember, I got here in '89, and I do know that a lot of things have changed in the 25 years I've been here, and it horrifies me because, I thought I was an old man when I left the industry and to come to Del Mar College and have a good time and teach, but 25 years later, and a lot more gray hair than. But I've seen some real changes, and I've seen a downtrend in student morale. I've seen a downtrend in faculty morale and everything else.
And it used to be that Del Mar was a premier local institution.
Oh, yeah.
People would hire, they would gladly hire from Del Mar.
Yeah.
Now, I'm understanding that it's difficult to get hired with certain degrees from Del Mar.
Yeah, if you're not if you're in one of the trades out on West Campus where you've got the Eagle Ford that can't wait for the next welder or pipe fitter or truck driver or whatever, then that's marvelous. And I've seen an awful lot here lately about how fabulous the salaries are with the people that go into the vocational end of it.
And there's a lot of truth to that. I was in the oil patch during the boom of the 80s, and there were people making $100,000 then that in 1986 they couldn't find a job.
Right,
And they couldn't find a job because they didn't have skill.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm all for that aspect of it, but you can't sacrifice the academic end of it for that, you know. And you know, I'm talking about the allied health people, and then our majors that go through for you know, graduate school, professional schools,
See,
and
the college is a long-term asset. The college belongs to the city. It's a long-term asset. Eagle Ford, we hope that's long-term, but
realistically,
every oil goes through boom and bust. It's a business cycle. It always has been. Is it going to last forever? It may, but it probably won't.
no. Well, you know, I mean, there's a limited amount of oil and gas in the, you know, the
And-
local geography, so.
And if we're driving electric cars, we're not going to need a whole lot of them.
No, that's true. And now they say that, you know, it's hard pressed to justify an electric car now compared to what it costs for gasoline prices going south. And
Well, when you have a 25% decrease in your oil, in your price per oil, it affects a lot of things.
oh yeah. Well, you know, it creates jobs, I guess. But I, you know, I really appreciate you looking this stuff up. And you know, I just like to point out that I am very, very disappointed, I guess I should say, with the current Board of Regents members, and you know, I can't thank you enough for taking an interest in this. And
Doctor, we started over a year ago looking at numbers and they didn't make sense.
right,
They didn't make sense a year ago. We investigated the bad debt. We were blocked every step of the way.
right.
If there's nothing wrong, why are they blocking us?
Well, I mean, when they try to run you off with $26.7 million, you know, and then I'll be totally honest with you, I'm gonna have to go over there and they were gonna charge me $641 and some odd cents to see paperwork for 1 year that I got for nothing the previous 10 years, and there wasn't any charge whatsoever for that. And that's when we found,
I believe we found 3 pieces of paper there
yeah, that's,
that they probably weren't expecting us to find,
right.
and that's why you've got to, well, you've been trying to get that for months.
Oh, yeah. Well, an update. So I was told that when he had his $26.7 million plus bill or estimate, then they estimated mine at being $641. And I'm just not going to, if it's going to take that to redact students' names and social security numbers or, you know, credit card numbers and stuff, that's not what I'm interested in, folks. I do know that students will default on the payment. But Del Mar College is known around town now as being a cash cow as far as I'm concerned. Student after student will go over there and, you know, borrow a bunch of money and then just never show up to class and never go back. I don't know how you cure that. That's beyond my educational purview.
I think the first thing you do is try to collect it.
Well, we found out that with 10, you know, with 5 feet of paperwork over 10 years, and I specifically asked for any indication, any proof that they tried to collect that, and that was predicated on the CFO at a workshop, board workshop, when he said he's making every effort.
He exhausted all collection efforts.
All collect. Well, there wasn't a single return receipt card through the, you know, the postal service. We call them little green cards. And that's what you have to do as an institution, is if somebody's not paying you, you send them a certified return receipt letter and you request payment, or here are your consequences.
And Doctor, let me reemphasize, Andrew from KRIS went down to Kingsville because based on our information, he said, why haven't you paid the $54,000? The vice president down there said, because nobody ever invoiced us.
That's right.
Now, they've exhausted all collection efforts, but never sent out an invoice.
Yeah.
I am deeply concerned
Right.
that we didn't find the only problem that ever existed at Del Mar in those 3 pieces of paper. If this is an indicator, which I believe it is, we've got to look at the material weakness in the internal control system.
Right.
And also, just to make certain that we weren't confused, I filed another PIA and said, give me all the lawsuits filed in the last 10 years to collect accounts receivable.
Yeah.
They gave it to me. Zero.
Zero, yeah.
They've not filed a lawsuit to collect an accounts receivable, yet they're writing off hundreds of thousands of dollars every year.
Right. Well, I won't ask you what that's a true indication of, but if it's been going on this many years, there's no telling how much money that the taxpayers have had thrown down the sewer, essentially.
The only indicator of that is your tax rate, because if you don't collect, if the college does not collect their accounts receivable,
Okay.
guess what happens?
Mm-hmm.
Their budget doesn't go down.
Right,
Somebody's gonna fund it.
okay.
That somebody is us.
Right,
So that's one reason why our tax rate is always among the highest.
okay.
So these are indicators of inefficiency. And every one of the financial ratios is an indicator that there's some sort of inefficiency going on.
Right,
So when they're all pointing towards inefficiency, it doesn't mean that's a well-run college.
no,
Now, I was the only one at that meeting the other night with all the candidates that didn't want this bond to go through.
mm-hmm.
They all thought Del Mar needed the 157 million.
Right,
Now, nobody had any numbers
No.
except me.
right.
And my numbers all said, don't pass the bond.
Mm-hmm.
No one had any numbers. They all had good feelings. Some people had credentials that they wanted to keep reiterating. They've been on boards and things. And that's wonderful. But we're looking at taxpayers' dollars, 80 million of them, $300,000 every business day.
Right, that's an awful lot of money.
Who's watching it?
Well, apparently no one.
No one qualified.
No.
No one qualified because I got all this research off the internet.
Yep.
And it all says something's terribly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need the bonds? We need the repairs. We clearly need the repairs. Don't defer it anymore.
Right.
Pay it out of current operating cash and sell the 95 acres.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'd love to see that the facilities east and west campus brought back up to what I would consider to be good standard.
They need to be.
For the-
They've got to be maintained, like all the other colleges that we've talked about.
Okay. Now, we do have a pretty extensive number of classrooms over there, and I've told you about this. Personally, I go over there like this fall. I start classes at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday, Wednesday, and I go until 8:50 at night. Okay? And I do a double overload over there, which is a whole lot of extra students. And then on Tuesday, Thursdays, I start at 2:30 in the afternoon, and I go until almost 10 o'clock at night. Now, when I'm teaching those classes, a lot of those buildings are just absolutely vacant. There are no students over there. So what I would like to do, since you're the accountant and you know the verbiage on that, is there some way that you can go and assess how many open classrooms you've got? And as a faculty member in science, I would not be the least bit offended if I had to go over to the history building or if I had to go to the business building to go hold a class where we can get a lot of students and fill it up and not have to have this enormous amount of money to build more classrooms. It'll probably go vacant half the time.
They teach courses in college about this, and businesses have picked up on it real readily because it saves money. They do PERT charts and Gantt charts. That means you take the resources available and the resources that you need and you max them.
Mm-hmm.
And you maximize the efficiency.
Right.
So if you've got 100 rooms and you've got 1,000 students, you maximize the efficiency of it. It's done in business all the time. Carrie's running for city council. Her husband does this.
Yeah, Carrie Meyer.
Her husband does this for, I believe it's an oil-field service company,
Mm-hmm.
but engineering companies, they all do this. They've done it for decades. I took the course in college. It was required. It was not computerized because we didn't have computers back then.
Right. You're dating yourself.
There weren't many computers. The small ones were $1 million,
Yeah.
and they weren't very fast.
Right.
So we had to hand calculate these PERT charts and Gantt charts. Well, if we could do it by hand then, and Microsoft actually has a program that does it.
Okay.
So that resources need to be matched with the requirements.
Right,
and then you maximize the use of your resources.
right.
And that way, you can see, if we've got 10 buildings and effectively 1.5 of them are empty, we don't need to build 10 more.
No,
And I can guarantee it's not being done.
yeah. Well, you know, I was thinking about the tire store. I had to go in there the other day, you know, and I waited for a good 30 minutes just to have a tire checked out at one of these national dealers around here. And all those bays were full at one time. But I can't imagine that company spending, you know, a fortune to double the amount of bays and not have all of those filled up at one time.
The same theory.
That's, you know, it just.
The only difference is, they have to make a profit.
You know,
If Delmar doesn't make a profit, what happens?
well, tax rate goes up.
That's the only thing. That's the variable. They can be as inefficient as they want, and they're still gonna pay their bills
You know.
because our taxes are gonna increase.
Well, and, you know, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but I think that's what's happened. And I'll go back to Wall Street Journal with that administrative load.
And to confirm that, we can look at the people that have been elevated in positions over there, they're getting more titles, and then they're bringing in people under them with the title they used to have.
Right.
Now, that means we're expanding the administrative hierarchy with declining enrollment.
You know,
Why is that happening?
makes no sense. But, and another thing that bothers me, and we'll see if this comes out. We have a chief financial officer that has absolutely no business background whatsoever that we can determine, okay, at least not academically. And up through being the dean of a division at Delmar College, which did not require a financial background, then for the life of me, I can't understand what was happening. Now, since a lot of this is being uncovered by Ed and brought out into the public, then all I want to do is, would you please explain, since we haven't had an internal auditor forever over there, what that position is all about?
Let me tell you what, an internal auditor is a control function. Now, the only reason you wouldn't have an internal auditor is because you've already got the internal controls built into the system, so you know that everything's working smoothly. Let me tell you how many companies this size, institutions this size, would have those kind of controls in place so that you would not need an internal auditor. That number would be 0.
Okay.
Now, but clearly, without an accounting background, the CFO is not qualified to exercise the internal control functions that's required, that would bring the standards up to the level that would prevent the college from having an internal auditor. Now, we can tell that by some of the transactions that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've gone in there, we've had to fight to get these transactions,
Right.
and we found things that don't look right. So, an internal auditor is a redundant control. He doesn't report to the CFO. He shouldn't report to the president. He should report to the board.
Okay.
That way he's independent. And he should go in there and verify things. We see these transactions where no invoice was sent out.
Mm-hmm.
He should be going through, and that, the indicator of that was, we've got $54,000 receivable from A&M, Kingsville. They never collect it. It goes for a year, it doesn't get collected. The internal auditor should go in there and say, why is this guy not paying it?
Mm-hmm.
And he should look through the transaction, find the invoice, find the letters that have been sent, the log of the phone calls. You know what he would find if he'd gone in there? Zero.
Zero.
None of that was done.
Yeah.
But he couldn't find it because he's not employed.
Right.
We don't have one. We have a sign.
Mm-hmm.
If you walk into the administration building, the sign says internal auditor that way.
Yeah.
Well, he's not been that way for at least a year,
Right.
probably 2.
Yeah.
And the last one we had didn't last very long, and I can't find out why that was either.
Right.
So it's an internal control function. We have an internal control problem at Delmar. And it is a huge problem and potentially a devastating problem.
Mhm.
These are hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Every day you're spending $300,000.
Right.
So what would it cost to get an internal auditor in? Well, it only costs if he doesn't save you money. I contend he's gonna save you money.
Yeah.
And
On each other.
I think you need to get 3 of them in there real quick, and 1 full-time and 2 temporaries, and get a team in there to go through this stuff and find out what in the world is wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's something is really, according to your charts, and all this is verified online, of course. And that's why I appreciate Ed, because he's not gonna say anything unless he can back it up with facts. And, but we desperately need, ladies and gentlemen, Ed over there on that board to ask the questions. And I agree with him. He mentioned to me on several occasions that he has never, in the year and a half that he's attended most board meetings over there, he's never had any Board of Regents member ask a pertinent question about the finances of the college.
They appear to accept what Dr. Stone presents, vote on it, and approve it.
Mhm.
And I just can't imagine that. $300,000 a day.
Right.
And they shouldn't be discussing this in closed session. This should be open session stuff. And there's nothing confidential there.
Well, something's gotta be done, and all I can tell you out there, ladies and gentlemen, since this is Ed's show, and his desire is to become one of the regents over there, at-large members of the Board of Regents at Delmar College, then, more power to you, Ed.
And I'm doing it to make a difference, but I'm going to have to fight to make a difference, because obviously there are 8 other members of that board that aren't looking at these financials the same way I am. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't mind being the only one in the room that has the right answer.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me.
Right.
But I'm not going to change my mind and make it wrong.
Right. Well, I'm just gonna say it out loud, since the man's an elected official, but we have a banker. He works for one of the major banks around here. I won't get into which one. He's the, chair or the president of the Delmar College Board of Regents. He's supposedly got a financial background. I don't know if he's a CPA or not. I don't think he
He's
is.
not certified. He's got
Okay.
an MBA, I believe.
Okay, he's got a master's in business administration. But why he hasn't been on top of this for the longest time, and I don't know how many years he's been on that board. I know at least 6, probably a second term of 6.
I'm not sure either.
So anyway,
But if you and I can figure it out in 3 months,
right.
and we had it figured out over a year ago.
Mhm. Okay.
We knew there was a problem.
Yeah.
And we can't get the information.
Well, I've been trying to get the information from essentially August 2013 until the present, and they fought me tooth and nail over there. That's when we uncovered the first go-around. And nothing out of the 5-foot stack of papers was redacted, and now I'm told that they don't have to give me that information, number one, and then they kind of came back and said, well, maybe the Attorney General wants you to do that, but we're gonna have to redact all this stuff from all those pages, and that's gonna cost a lot of money and a lot of time and so forth. So if you'll go ahead and write us a check for $641, then we'll give you that 1 year's worth of.
And I'll tell you, it's taken a lot to get this information that it shouldn't have taken.
Yeah.
In fact, the only reason that the 27 million went away, the only reason is because Rick Spurl got involved
Right.
with KRIS, and then the Attorney General got involved.
Right.
As soon as the Attorney General got involved, I had been given a letter and an email saying that I'd already been provided with information that they knew clearly I hadn't been provided with.
Oh, yeah.
So I explained that in no uncertain terms to the Attorney General, and instantly I was provided with PDFs
Oh, my gosh. Can you imagine that?
that they were withholding from me.
Mhm.
And it wasn't accidental.
No. And then, this smoke screen about, well, we really didn't know what you were asking for, so months or 2 later.
Now that was created at the end of the whole thing.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that was the final blow, trying to
Nobody thought of that until the end.
Right, yeah, well, that's the last, I think that's called a last ditch effort. But anyway, well, I sure appreciate you having the interest in the taxpayers and the students and so forth, Ed, to go over there and put yourself through that meat grinder.
And Doctor, let me make sure that everybody understands. All the other candidates were real proponents of Del Mar. Well, so am I.
That's right.
Now, I take a different approach. I say, let's put the money in the professors.
Right.
Hire, retain good professors. That way you get good quality education. Your students have a better opportunity to get a good job. We've got employers coming in there wanting to hire them. Let's reduce the administrative overhead. Let's reduce the excess burden on the taxpayer.
Right.
Do I like Del Mar? My wife worked her way out of poverty by going to Del Mar.
Right.
It's absolutely a blessing to the city. Let's make it a blessing with half the cost.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, because there's so much, I would say waste, it appears to me. I'm not an accountant.
Well, all the financial ratios indicate inefficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if one or two of them said it was inefficient and the rest of the ratios say no, it's efficient, then maybe there's a question. In my mind, there's no question.
Well, what I dislike about it, Ed, is, every year there are more and more forms piled up on faculty members, and we want to make sure that you're assessing students properly. I mean, if I don't know by now how to give a final exam and assess students, then I don't need to spend 5 hours a day for weeks on end trying to prove to them that I know what I'm talking about.
And how does that improve the educational experience?
It does not. It detracts from my ability to have enough time to really do what I'm supposed to be doing, and that's teaching students. But then again, I'm assessed, and I'm under the gun to do more and more with less and less, and then this administration is running wild, and nobody's holding their feet to the fire.
Nobody.
It's not happening, folks. So
When I went to school, it was much cheaper, but you paid for the education. You didn't go in there as if you were entitled to anything.
no. I tell my students, when I went through undergraduate school and had a double major, chemistry and biology, which meant I was taking anywhere from 18 to 25 semester hours a semester and went all summer to catch up to get that second major, then I missed 1/2 of one laboratory session in the years I was there. Okay, and I never ever questioned the ability of any of my professors to know what they were doing, providing me with an education. I never had one slightest reservation. I never said, well, obviously this man or woman doesn't know what they're talking about. But I missed 1/2 of one lab because I was ill, and I won't describe what I was doing in the trash can, and the other students in there got upset and they said, get out of here, okay? And I never missed 1 minute of any class through the years in graduate school.
Well,
And I never complained.
I was told not to waste my money on college because I worked about 5 years in a manual labor job.
Yeah.
And people that I worked with thought that college was a waste of money.
Mhm.
So I was told not to waste my money on college. So I made certain that I didn't waste my money on college. I got every dime's worth.
Yeah. there you
And
go.
I wrote the check and I made certain I got my money's worth.
Yeah, right.
And you only do that by going to school and paying attention.
Well,
There was no thought of challenging a professor.
no, yeah, they'd throw you out. They didn't
They
tolerate
had the
it.
knowledge. I did not.
If I, even in graduate school, if I argue with a PhD, the first thing they do is turn around and say, where's yours? When you get yours here on the tabletop, we'll discuss it. And I tell my students that quite a bit. I'm as popular as Boyle sometimes over there with my students, but they need to have the discipline to know that you're in there with people that have paid the price, they know what they're doing, and no matter what the administrators want to do. Did you know that every semester, or no, every academic year, they put out forms so that the students can evaluate me?
How do they have the knowledge to evaluate you?
I don't know.
Nobody ever cared what I thought.
Well, and, you know, they haven't fired me yet, and I haven't been, you know, been over and capitulated to a student yet.
See, you've got to have the academic freedom. All the professors, that's the only way we're going to attract good professors and keep them.
Right,
You've got the academic freedom and the shared governance.
that's right.
And I know there was some issues about some breaching of the shared governance a couple of board meetings ago,
Mhm.
and it was very bothersome to me because it looks like Del Mar writes the rules and then they don't follow
No, no.
them. And that really bothers me.
Yeah, well, I can guarantee you that that's happened to me on several occasions over there, you know. Well, due to extenuating circumstances, a student has the ability to come back after deadlines have not been made. Okay, and complain about you.
That, well,
I won't get into that.
I guess I better not say anything about that either.
I don't think you should. Anyway, well,
But I have strong feelings about it.
right, I know you do. Well, anyway, I appreciate it, Ed, and, you know, if I can help in any other way, but I'm just gonna tell the viewers out there, folks, there's, as far as I'm concerned, this has been a breath of fresh air to get to know Ed and, get to know what he's all about, and have somebody on that board that's interested more in students and the finances over there than they are just, you know, another free lunch.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay.
Folks, I need every vote I can get. It's a big job. I'm up for it. I'm ready to do our work.
Yes. Well, thank you, Ed. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
I guess our camera lady's gone.
Yeah, well, we went from essentially 6:10 to 6:56.
Okay. This is an important graph. It's the debt per student, and it's the entire community colleges in Texas. They range from $0 up to $18,000 of debt per student. That means we have at Del Mar almost $100 million in outstanding debt. We have 10,600 students. You divide the debt, 100 million, by the 10,600 students, and you get slightly less than $10,000 per student. Now, that is on the high end in Texas. $6,000 debt per student is the average. If the bonds are approved, the 157 million, we can increase our debt per student at that point to almost $24,000 per student. That'll be substantially higher than the current high in Texas, and it will be 4 times the average Texas debt per student. Had the original 287 million been passed, that would make us almost twice as high as the current high college in Texas, and 6 times the average in Texas. So it puts Del Mar completely off the chart. The debt per student shows that we are inefficiently using our assets. We're borrowing a great deal more money than the average colleges in Texas to facilitate the same education. This graph shows the tax rates for community colleges in Texas. It starts at a low of about 1.19 cents, and it goes all the way up to 27.7, almost 28 cents per 100. So Del Mar is currently the third from the top, third highest taxing rate for any community college in Texas. That is because of several factors. Think of how a business is run. They've got accounts receivable that they collect and fund their operations. Del Mar's had problems collecting their accounts receivable. So when they don't collect them, they still maintain an operating business. How do they do that? They increase the debt. They increase the tax rate for the taxpayers. So we're at almost the high in Texas. We were second high in 2008. Now we're third highest. That's because of inefficiencies. These statistics, these ratios are showing how inefficiently the college is currently run. They're all indicators, and all the indicators are pointing the wrong way. This graph compares the increase in students for all community colleges in Texas from 2003 to 2012. If you'll notice, Del Mar had a decrease in that period of time compared to all these other colleges that with the exception of a very few, had substantial increases. Now, from 2010 to 2013, Del Mar's enrollment declined by 14%. So now we're looking at this graph. It compares to all the colleges, community colleges in Texas, and the indication is that they're all enrolling more students while Del Mar's enrollment is declining. Yet, the Board of Regents, as well as the administrators at Del Mar, say we're bursting at the seams, we need to build a new campus. I can't see the justification in the trend to build a new campus. We're not even using the current facilities in an economical way. Apparently, when we had a high enrollment in 2010, we were able to facilitate them in the current buildings. Now they're saying with lower enrollment, they being Del Mar Board of Regents and administrators, with lower enrollment, we can't accommodate the students. These numbers don't justify what they're asking for, and they're additional run college. Okay, we're returning to the debt per student graph. It's terribly important because this is the primary reflection of how inefficiently the colleges run. We currently are among the highest in Texas. There are several that are higher, but many that are lower. Now, it would be as big an ordeal if we had growth. We do not have growth. We've got a shrinking enrollment. So the debt per student should not be increased during a time of declining enrollment to accommodate the declining enrollment. The factors that are represented by these graphs do not justify the approval of a $157 million bond. Now, it was originally $287 million. How do they get to these numbers? What are they looking at? I'm comparing everything, all the financial ratios, to the other community colleges in Texas. I can't get to the justification that they have arrived at in asking the taxpayers of Corpus to increase their indebtedness for building another campus. They are wanting to improve some of the current buildings on both campuses. We need to sell the 95 acres, use the proceeds, repair the buildings, stop deferring the cost.